Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
And off to the World Series they go.
And a swing and a fly ball to left field. Back goes Arozarena. She's gone!
For the first time since 1993, the Toronto Blue Jays will be making their way to baseball's biggest stage, coming face-to-face with the Los Angeles Dodgers for a chance to win it all. The love for this team, though, goes beyond the parameters of the 416, 905, or 647. The boys of summer are heading into the Fall Classic with the support of what seems like the entire red and white. Even Prime Minister Carney predicting this kind of outcome and serving up some friendly competition in the Oval Office.
We're coming down for the World Series, Mr. President.
Oh, good.
So here's to another potential 7 nights of nail-biting, finger-crossing, and no shortage of Canadian pride as we head to the World Series. I'm Alex Seixeiro, and today on The Big Story, I'm talking to Shoaib Alli, the host of Blue Jays radio broadcast, to break down all things Jays heading into the Fall Classic against one of the best teams in MLB, a team that houses what could have been one of their own. Sho, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, Alex.
So I was listening to the radio postgame show following the Game 7 win over Seattle Monday. I heard Jays fans calling in from the States. I believe there was someone who called in from Hong Kong. During this portion of the season, I've heard callers from Australia. There's something about this version of the Jays show that is really connecting with Canadians in this country and Canadians abroad. Why do you think the Blue Jays have become Canada's team?
I mean, I think it's because there's so many parts of this team that a lot of people can see in themselves, I would say, right? I mean, it's a resilient team. It's a team that never says die. I mean, it's a team that never gives up. They have the most comeback wins. They're extremely likable. I've heard from so many people, players, broadcasters, people who work in the front office, both, firsthand and otherwise, that it's a team that, generally speaking, has come together in a way that many teams haven't across sports before. And I mean, you know this, Alex. I mean, many teams, I think they win and lose together, but they don't always do it as a team, which I know sounds kind of silly to say when you compare those two statements. But yeah, I mean, this Blue Jays team has been able to do that all year. I think they've also shown a great propensity to turn the page. Like, I think one of the things I've loved about watching this team, whether it's in the regular season or during these playoffs, is whether they have a huge win or a devastating loss, they treat the next game as if the series or the season is 0-0, which I think is incredibly impressive.
And in any sport, it is extremely rare to see a team go from last place to first place, which happened for the Jays this year, but to go from a last place team to the winner of the American League pennant, with the Jays now 4 wins away from the World Series, is something I don't think anyone would have expected unless your name is John Schneider or you're a coach on the team or a player on the team. It's been quite the turnaround. If you had to sum up how the Jays got to this point, how would you best describe it?
I do think when it comes to comparing them, especially to 2024, because like you said, they finished dead last in their division. The most exciting thing that happened last year, as you know, was them selling at the deadline. So going from that to where we are today in the World Series against the Dodgers is pretty remarkable. I do think them getting so much internal improvement from guys who were already there. I mean, certainly Ernie Clement has been a phenomenal story. Certainly Vladimir Guerrero Jr. having the postseason that everyone hoped he would have after the regular seasons he has had in the not too distant past. But certainly, guys like George Springer, right? George Springer, how many guys in here age 35, 36 season do you have a career best? How many guys get better athletes after having, a year in which he had a 670 OPS roughly, right? So I think that they had so many internal improvements can be traced to where they are now. Certainly, I mean, you can give the Ross Atkins the credit, the GM, you can give Mark Shapiro the credit, the president, CEO, you can give John Schneider, the manager, the credit. And all of those guys had a hand in hiring David Popkins. I know we don't always like to give credit to the hitting coaches, or maybe we give too much credit to the hitting coaches. But at the same time, yeah, I think Popkins helping a lot of these guys, even the Miles Straws of the world, the Nathan Lucases of the world, a lot of these guys become their best selves is what I've heard. They, helping these guys be not afraid to get to 2 strikes and still making sure they get their A swing off. I mean, that stuff it's incredibly impressive considering the type of offensive display we saw so often in 2024.
And it's remarkable to see show where the Jays are now and look back at what we were all talking about in spring training, where the direction of the franchise was quite murky. And that was because Bo Bichette was going into the last year of his deal, and so was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And it seemed like the Jays were going to go into the season without signing their superstar, and that in fact happened. But then April 9th arrived, and that's when the Jays and Vladdy signed off on their 14-year, $500 million extension. And I think at that point, it really set the course for what this team is going to look like years down the road. Without Bo and Vladdy next season, even thinking about that possibility is quite scary. And Bo's future we're not too sure about, but the fact that Vladdy wanted to be here, and he will be here, and the Jays made that commitment, and you look at how amazing of a postseason Guerrero Jr. has had, that day and that commitment from both the Jays and Vladdy really goes a long way, even just this year, to the success of the team, doesn't it?
No question. And I mean, can't you imagine what the conversations we would be having in this city, in this country, if...
No, I can't imagine.
Yeah, well, imagine... imagine, let's say, Vladdy hadn't signed, and he had the postseason he's having now. What would the conversation be? Like, oh, add another $100 million in the price tag, add another $200 million in the price tag, right? I mean, that was the kind of conversations we would be having. And yeah, I mean, now it feels like the window is way more open. I think it always felt like there was some kind of expiry date, I suppose, on the window for this Blue Jays core because of George Springer's age, and Bo and Vladdy both could not be here. And now it kind of feels like with Vladdy signed long term, and you're certainly hoping that whether or not Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s big moment, maybe it already came, whether you want to call it the Grand Slam against the Yankees, maybe a bigger moment still has yet to come in the World Series against the Dodgers. That'll be a lot of fun. I certainly hope it does come, like in a moment a la George Springer in the 7th inning in Game 7 of the ALCS. But still, I mean, that you have that guy here in Toronto to be the ambassador, the guy who talks to everyone at first base, it's truly incredible. And I do think it makes the possibility of Bo Bichette re-signing all that much more likely. I know that sounds silly because it's a lot of money to spend, but at the end of the day, you got to imagine Bo, I know he's not as effusive with his emotions as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is, all things considered, but I mean, he's been pretty honest and transparent about wanting to win a World Series in Toronto with Vladdy, and I believe him.
Speaking with Shoaib Alli, the host of Blue Jays radio broadcasts along the Sportsnet radio network, the Blue Jays are back in the World Series for the first time in 32 years, and the World Series begins Friday in Toronto. It's the Jays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I've had a chance, Show, to be inside Rogers Center for some memorable postseason moments. The best for me, probably Game 5 of the American League Championship Series in 2015. The Jays were trailing Kansas City 3-1, and Marco Estrada, one of the Jays' top pitchers at that point, had an unbelievable performance. The manager, John Gibbons, came out of the dugout, took the ball from Estrada, and that building was extremely loud. You were at Rogers Center Monday night for Game 7 against Seattle. I want you to describe to me and to the listeners the moment when George Springer, essentially on one leg, hit what I think is arguably the second biggest home run in Jays history. Take us back to Monday and the moment when the ball went off George's bat and into the seats in left field.
Yeah, first of all, I'm totally with you. I've always held the Jose Bautista bat flip moment in a special place in my heart, no question. And I think it's always lived pretty close to Joe Carter's walk-off, touch 'em all Joe, the call from Tom Cheek. But I really do think George Springer's home run, Game 7 of the ALCS, the game was pretty lifeless at that point, and I'm not criticizing the crowd by any means because they didn't really have a lot to cheer for. But then, it was interesting because right before that, Gosman comes out of the bullpen, and for the first time in the game, you hear Pink Floyd, you hear the ka-ching of the coins come down from the stadium PA system, and the crowd went nuts. And then afterwards, you hear Brian Wu come back in the game, the walk for Madison Barger, IKF has the 0-2 single right up the middle, there's the sac bunt from Jimenez, and all of a sudden George Springer is standing at the dish. And when George Springer launched that home run, so I'm sitting in the radio booth with Ben Schulman and Chris LaRue. I usually sit right between them, Ben on my right and Chris on my left. They like to sit near the monitor so they can have the replays close to their eyeballs. And as soon as the ball left Springer's bat, we all stood up. There's a video that one of our technical directors, Stephen Coyle, took, and there's a video of the three of us just standing up in unison as the ground shook. It was unbelievable. It was like standing on the deck of a ship. You could actually feel the Rogers Center swaying. I looked into the crowd. Chris LaRue was pumping his fists out of the radio booth into the crowd below. I mean, it looked like a mosh pit. It was insane. The roof was closed. I thought the roof was going to blow right off the Rogers Center. It was deafening, and I had the soundproof headphones on. It was just one of the coolest sports experiences I have personally ever seen with my own two eyes.
It's one of those, where were you when? And for me, I was at home with my wife and my two kids. We sent my younger daughter to bed, usually about 10 o'clock, but I think we woke her up when Springer hit the home run. So she came down with her pillow and her blanket, and we said, okay, sweetheart, you can watch the rest of the game. So the four of us huddled in, and I remember the bat flip, another moment, 92, 93, we can go on and on. It was just an incredible moment for a guy who got hit in the knee just a few days ago and is not 100%. So December 2023, it was afternoon. I was working for 680 News Radio in Toronto, and it's a day I'll never forget. It's a day that Jays fans will never forget. It really seemed like the Jays were going to land the big offseason prize in baseball. A guy who not only pitched extremely well, but hit. And we're talking about Shohei Ohtani. And for a couple of hours, it looked like Ohtani was going to board a plane for Pearson Airport, suggesting that Toronto was going to sign him. We were getting calls into the newsroom that afternoon. People were driving to Pearson asking us where the plane is going to land because they want to know where to get the best vantage point of Ohtani arriving. And we're telling them, we don't think he's coming, but if you want to go, knock your socks off. And now he's part of this Dodgers team that is going up against the Blue Jays in the World Series. I mean, what do you make of the Jays going up against baseball's megastar starting on Friday?
Yeah, Shohei Ohtani will quite literally be on a plane to Toronto this week. Is going to be repeated many, many times, I'm sure. But yeah, it's funny you were at the 680 newsroom. I was in the 59 newsroom, and I remember we had this like in-house television set to a feed. I guess it was some kind of chopper feed. I don't know if Sportsnet sent it or CBC sent it, but it was a chopper feed of the private terminal at Pearson Airport. And I remember so vividly, I'm standing there, Jeff Blair, Kevin Barker are sitting there as well, Will Liu and Alex Wong, Ailish Forfar, Justin Cuthbert, basically the whole station. We're all sitting there just huddled around this teensy tiny little TV. And I'll always give Blair credit because Blair, he stood up and said, I can't be a part of this. And he walked away. Oh man, that was one of the most fun afternoons, even though it did not end with Shohei Ohtani coming to Toronto, but one of the most fun afternoons that I remember, certainly. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a real challenge, right? Shohei Ohtani, it's funny because he had kind of a mediocre postseason right up until Game 4 of the NLCS, in which he basically authored perhaps the greatest postseason game by a baseball player. If you wanted to convince me that it's by an athlete ever in any sport, frankly, I wouldn't really disagree. I mean, I can't imagine there are too many athletes that did what he did on quote-unquote offense and defense, 3 home runs and 10 Ks over 6 innings of work. I mean, pretty incredible stuff. But yeah, I mean, Shohei Ohtani is, funnily enough, the 4th best pitcher on the Dodgers roster behind Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Tyler Glasnow, if you're talking about just purely starters. So it's going to be a real tough sledding for the Blue Jays when you're looking at what the Dodgers represent. I think you do have to decide, generally speaking, who do you want to prevent from beating you? Is it Shohei? Is it Mookie Betts? Is it Freddie Freeman? Is it Will Smith? Is it former Blue Jay Teoscar Hernandez? Like, there are a lot of places you could go with that answer, but you have to commit to one, maybe two guys, because otherwise I think trying to get them all is almost a fool's errand, I think.
We know the Blue Jays have essentially been the comeback kids this season in baseball, leading baseball in come-from-behind wins. They did it again on Monday night to win the American League Championship Series. So now we have hardcore Jays fans, maybe some newer Jays fans who have jumped on the bandwagon, truly believing that this could be the year that the Blue Jays win their third World Series in franchise history. When you think they're down and out, they find a way to come back, and Monday was, I think, a really good example of that. So we have a lot of Jays fans listening, maybe some casual fans, hoping that this ends in euphoria, that coast to coast to coast, in maybe a week and a half or so, the Blue Jays will be celebrating a third World Series title in upsetting the big, bad LA Dodgers, with no one really giving the Jays, a chance in you-know-what to win. So I want you to put on your Jays ball cap and give me the scenario, paint the picture here of how the Toronto Blue Jays can upset the Dodgers and win another World Series title. Give it to me straight.
Okay, so I do think it's possible. It is definitely going to be tough. The Blue Jays are underdogs, and I mean, they're heavy underdogs for a good reason, because the Dodgers are, like a $600 million payroll team. They have, like we talked about, the Blake Snells and Yamamotos of the world. I mean, Yoshinobu Yamamoto was given the richest contract for a pitcher before he'd ever thrown a pitch in Major League Baseball, obviously coming over from Japan. I mean, and the Dodgers are littered with stories like that. But I do think, and again, you have to look back a couple of years to see a team that succeeded the way the Blue Jays succeeded, and the parallel has often been the 2015 Kansas City Royals, ironically a team that beat the Blue Jays in the ALCS en route to a World Series title. But that team utilized great bullpen arms. They utilized putting the ball in play, great defense. They utilized a deep lineup 1 through 9. They had some stars, no question, that could mash, but they had the utility players as well. And while it's not a perfect comparison by any means, I think the Blue Jays have some heavy lifting to do vis-a-vis their bullpen, vis-a-vis their starting rotation versus those 2015 Royals, no question. I think this Blue Jays team is a deep enough lineup to make sure the opposing pitcher, no matter who it is, even if it's Blake Snell, even if it's Yamamoto, even if it's Glasnow, even if it's Shohei Ohtani, to make them work every single pitch, every single AB, and that's a tough style of baseball to sustain. Gosh, over 162 games in the regular season, and then through a run to a World Series championship. But the Blue Jays have defied the odds. They have shown they're capable of doing it over a long stretch of time. They never waste swings, it feels like, or at the very least do it very infrequently versus a lot of other teams. They have one of the lowest strikeout rates of any team that made the playoffs this season. I think all of those things can, if the offense comes through against guys like Snell and so on, can help them capture a World Series title. Don't get me wrong, it won't be a Jays sweep. I could see Jays in 7, for example, but I think they have what it takes.
And I think the Jays being the underdog is exactly what the players and the coaches and the management would love. They have been counted out since the spring, essentially. I think a lot of Jays fans were hoping in September they would kind of be hovering around a playoff spot. And boy, the team has delivered so much more. And it all begins Friday night in Toronto at Rogers Centre, the World Series back in town for the first time in 32 years. And Shoaib Alli, the host of Jays radio broadcast, will be there soaking it in. Shoaib, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Alex, anytime.
And that was the big story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. You can find us on X at The Big Story FPN, or send us an email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. Be sure to share this with someone you think might be interested in this episode. The Big Story releases new episodes every morning, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alex Seixeiro. Thanks for listening.